Did you know?
We can truly say that heaven's gates were thrown open wide for civil rights legends Dr. Dorothy Height and Dr. Benjamin Hook. I look back at their legacies with my guest today. Dr. Yohuru Williams is an associate professor of history and co-director of Black Studies at Fairfield University. And for decades and decades, Dr. Height worked towards bettering the lives of women, children, and minorities, all minorities. The passing of Dr. Benjamin Hook affected us all. We were just so moved by this Southern gentleman as he led the NAACP for years. And then there was also Lena Horne, who was a civil rights champion in her own right. She broke barriers for many in entertainment, and Black stars today somehow don't even know that she broke one barrier after another, and that's why they're able to get the particular roles they are getting now. Dr. Yohuru Williams, let's talk about these legendary people. It seems that they were in a class by themselves.
They certainly were. I mean, we're seeing the passing. Tom Brokaw talked about the greatest generation. And when you consider that Lena Horne is born in 1917, Dr. Hooks is born in 1925, of course, Dorothy Height's a contemporary of theirs. You know, we are seeing the passing of this generation that ushered in, survived the Great War, World War II, and then ushered in one of the greatest periods of social change in American history, the Civil Rights Movement.
And they were so dedicated to this change, and you don't see that type of leadership popping up to replace them.
No, it's very true, and I think, you know, some people argue that history was in some sense on their side. They dealt with the visible vestiges of segregation every day, and our generation has become somewhat complacent, and particularly in the aftermath of the election of the nation's first Black president. You know, people aren't really galvanized or tuned in. Having said that, as you mentioned, these people were, Dorothy Height in particular, and certainly Dr. Hooks, were very much committed to the prospects of social justice, and that transcends civil rights. So we need that kind of spirit in the community today among people who hunger for social justice in the way that Dorothy Height and Dr. King conceptualized it.
All right, now let's talk about a very disturbing problem that has come to light at Arlington National Cemetery. Why don't you tell us about what has happened in Section 27?
Well, it's very unfortunate, and it speaks to people, again, not being concerned or aware of their history. But there were African-American soldiers who served in the Civil War whose graves have been not kept up and are now misidentified. So these are men who gave their lives in the service of their country to preserve the Union, as Lincoln memorably committed the nation. And now we're not properly recognizing them because those graves have fallen into disrepair. And the Park Service has not really responded to calls to address this issue.
What can we do to correct this?
I think ultimately I'd like to see people be involved in a writing campaign. Again, it's some of the very things that Dorothy Height and Benjamin Hooks pushed for. You know, really to be in tune and to understand that preserving this history is preserving an important chapter of American history, and also promoting the cause of social justice and recognizing the contributions of all Americans that have made us what we are today.
Alrighty, and then finally, this is a very little known fact, and that's about the Black survivors and the Black victims of the Nazi Holocaust.
Absolutely. Clarence Lucene has written a remarkable book on African Americans, or not just African Americans, Afro-Germans, and their treatment at the hands of the Nazis under Adolf Hitler. It is one of those chapters, and I think it ties in nicely with what's going on in Arlington, because there's so much history we don't know. Certainly, we would want to privilege the experience of 6 million Jews who were slaughtered at the hands of the Nazis. But clearly, we also have to talk about the other groups who were subject to Nazi racism, and Afro-Germans and African Americans were part of that slaughter.
And that, again, goes to the importance of history. And as a professor of history and someone who loves and studies and lives history, tell us the importance of knowing our history and keeping alive our history.
Well, it's important for two reasons, and I think Dr. King encapsulates both. And that is understanding where you need to fight, where you need to focus your energy in the upcoming century, and also a spirit of awareness. You know, understanding the contributions of someone like Lena Horne gives a entertainer a sense of responsibility and the duty to give back.
And I like that you said that, a sense of responsibility, because it seems a lot of entertainers, musicians included, have a sense of they're entitled. And someone had to open the door and break down a barrier for them to have this particular opportunity. Absolutely.
I mean, a Connecticut hero for all of us is Jackie Robinson. And clearly he embodied that very spirit of giving back and understood, you know, he himself was a very astute student of history, but he also understood that he had a responsibility to bring people along as he broke barriers and progressed himself.
And the thing that happens a lot of time is when we have an athlete or a musician who's in trouble, then it makes it a little harder for the next one who's coming along and wants that same opportunity.
Absolutely. And ultimately, I think our young people, one of the other reasons history is important is to understand that they have other role models besides athletes and entertainers.
All right, well, we are out of time, but we did cover a lot here on Our Lives Today, and we hope that you've learned something. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for making our lives a part of your life. We will see you next time.